Hello everyone, my name is Tim, better known as Wingman on the Appalachian Trail.
And I'm Peggy, better known as Spider on the Appalachian Trail, and we'd like to talk to you about the adventure chapter of our lives. We love to hike and we love to backpack. We're section hikers on the Appalachian Trail, and we've hiked to Southern Virginia.
We also love to camp. You will often find us in our Grand Design Imagine camper, where we have camped up and down the East Coast over the last several years.
We love anything that is adventurous and includes the outdoors.
What we want to talk to you specifically about in this video and another series of videos is one of our greatest adventures, which is hiking the Tour du Mont Blanc. The Tour du Mont Blanc is an approximate 106-mile trek around the Mont Blanc Massif at the borders of France, Italy, and Switzerland. Mont Blanc is the highest mountain in Western Europe, but you don't climb the mountain, you circumvent it in a trek that is normally made up of 11 stages of varying lengths and difficulties. We hiked this hike in July of 2022 in a 12-day hike that included 1 day of rest and 11 days of hiking. It was truly a great adventure, and we'd like to invite you to come along with us on each day of the Tour du Mont Blanc. The first day of our trek, on July the 1st, was from a place called Planpraz above the charming village of Chamonix down to the village of Houches, a distance of 8 miles and a pretty grueling downhill on the latter part of that hike. This is technically stage 11 of the Tour du Mont Blanc, but our tour operator, Pygmy Elephant, that we will recommend and mention in these videos quite often, suggested that we do stage 11 first. After it was all over, we felt like this was a good suggestion and would do it again.
So we arrived in Chamonix a day before our trek started, and we stayed at the boutique Hotel Le Morgane, which we would highly recommend. It was very clean and the staff were very accommodating. So this is the morning of the first day of our trek, and as you can see, we've come down to this beautiful breakfast buffet, and what a great way for a send-off on the TMB.
One of the things that concerned us that first morning was that it was raining in Chamonix. We put on our rain gear and headed out from the hotel, and then headed down the streets of the lovely village of Chamonix on our way to the trailhead. From Chamonix, there are a couple of different ways to get up to Planpraz. You can either hike up the mountainside or take the gondola. Most hikers choose to take the gondola. We arrived at the station a few minutes before it was open, but waited patiently, and before long we were on our way up the mountainside to access the trail. After exiting the gondola at Planpraz, we walked up an old road that gave us our access to the trail.
Before we joined the trail, we turned and looked back down into the Chamonix Valley. We noticed that the clouds were lifting, so we were hopeful the rain would end soon. We said goodbye to the sign in high hopes that we would see it again on July the 12th.
Wasn't long before we had our first encounter with ibex on the trail. There were actually 3 ibex that came down the side of the ridge into the trail and then into the rocks above. This would not be our last encounter with ibex on this day. After climbing for about 8/10 of a mile, which seemed much further, we came to our first pass in the mountain, or what they call Col. This was Col Brevant, and it led the trail through to the north side of the mountain where we would have a different valley view. After we went through the Col, the trail got markedly more difficult and more rocky. There are 2 ladders on this section that we did not capture video of, but we continued on up this rocky trail on toward Le Brevant.
Looking out over this valley, we were truly above the clouds. After a very rocky and treacherous climb, the trail came into the service road up to Le Brevant. The road and the trail are together for a while as you climb to Le Brevant, and then also as we climb we noticed that the fog and the clouds were rolling in once again.
As we approached the Le Brevant cable car station, the fog had become thick enough that had there not been a sign, we would not have known that the station was there. This was our high point for the day, and now it was time to start down the other side in hopes that the fog would lift and there would be better views to come. Boy, we weren't disappointed. As I approached a switchback in the trail, we noticed another ibex, but he didn't seem to be concerned with us at all. We had heard the trail from Le Brevant to Les Houches offered some of the best views of Mont Blanc,
And boy, she didn't disappoint us. When the clouds rolled back and the blue sky appeared, there she stood looking so beautiful. The blueness of the sky and the mountaintop and clouds and then the Chamonix Valley below were some of the prettiest views of our day.
With our desire for pictures and video satisfied of Mont Blanc, it was time for us to head down into Houches. We had heard that this was a difficult descent, and boy, it really was. We found out there were chains in the side of the mountain, there were handrails driven into the rock, there were steps of steel that were driven into the rock, and this made for a long, hard afternoon of downhill into Houches.
After we got to Les Houches, we cleaned up and had dinner, and then we went for our evening walk. We walked over to the official starting arch for the TMB, and this brought our first day to a close.